What's up, humans? Welcome back to the Human Music Podcast, where we talk about how to get from where you are to where you want to be as a music producer. I'm Luke Rain, and this right here is episode 75, dealing with rejection as a music producer. So, what's the best way to deal with rejection? We can be rejected by our friends or acquaintances, by our fellow musicians, by bloggers, gatekeepers, playlisters, or even by labels. How can you best respond to rejection and use it to grow as a music producer? Real quick, the song of the week that you hear playing behind me is by the one and only Rip Kenny, his new single called Not One More. This thing slaps. Go check it out. All the links are down below, wherever you happen to be listening to or watching this podcast. And while you're at it down there, check out our sponsors. We got Dojo TV, where you get free producer live stream classes from the Producer Dojo Senseis. We just recorded this episode on Dojo TV. You could have been there in the chat with us, hanging out. So why weren't you? Because you didn't click that link yet. Hop on it. Also, highly recommend the weekly download, where you can learn from our mentor, Il Gates, in his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 250 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. That's $5 per new episode, and you get to listen to every old episode too. Watch and learn all the dopest Ableton and music making tricks. I don't even use Ableton, and I'm getting so much amazing info from the weekly download for years, like help shape me as a producer. And then finally, guest practices, where you can learn from Seth Drake from the Approach Institute. He's the best engineer we know, and guest practice is dope. You can see him do a lot of breakdowns, live working with shit, shootouts over, EQs and mastering plugins and limiters and all sorts of stuff. And he's also got a whole big course, called The Approach, and I went through it. Oh my God, it blew my mind over and over again. Best engineering course I've ever seen, hands down, from the best engineering teacher I've ever met. So, go over there, check out guest practices. Your first class is free. I guarantee you will want to learn more. All those links are down below and on our website, thehumanmusicpodcast.com. You can also go over there to the website to check out more episodes, get our socials, free sound packs, see what other places we're streaming, and follow us at The Human Music Podcast all over the place, and at Human Music Pod on Twitter. And let's get into this episode about dealing with rejection as a music producer.
Hello, people of Earth. This is Tesco with Rip Kenny and Trap Jesus, and you're listening to the Human Music Podcast. Woo!
Human Music Podcast. I like it. What's up, humans of Dojo TV?
What's Gucci?
We are live on Dojo TV today. Feeling good, feeling great.
Yes,
guys,
sir.
how are yous? How are yous, guys?
Beautiful. Just having a human day on this human planet, and just the human experience, making human music.
Amen to
Big
that.
floaty rock.
The organism
How
is
about you?
functioning as expected.
I put human paint onto a human household to make it look prettier to other humans, and
Ooh,
also
very
more water resistant. I think so.
very
That mundane shit. But now I'm here talking to some of my favorite humans right here about some of our
Hey.
favorite stuff. And as much as we all like making music, I think there's one thing we all love way more is being rejected as a creative. Is just the best when you put your heart and your soul, your blood, sweat, and tears into a thing, and then people say they don't like it. It's just warms my heart. Just that's what we do it for, right, guys?
Yeah,
Just
nothing like
rejection.
thinking that thing that you thought was amazing is actually ass,
Oh,
confirmed ass. But that's okay, because it's all part of the journey, and it's what gets us creating the quality stuff. And we're gonna go into all that today. But man, I definitely feel like this is such a key part of the music producer journey, and something that I struggle with, rightfully so, as everybody does on the journey. And it's funny now looking back, seeing people that are going through it, because now that you're on the other side, you realize how crucial that was for your overall growth and development. Man,
It
have you guys
remains
had any notable rejections?
too many to count. Man,
Yeah.
honestly.
For real.
Like,
I mean, like more often than not, when it comes down to it, you know, it's funny because like the more you go, you know, on the one hand, you're more used to it, you're more resilient, you don't like think about quitting quite as realistically. But you know, you still go through that same little roller coaster of emotion where you like start a song, you're like, oh, this is hard, and then oh shit, it's filthy now, and oh, I'm so excited about it, and I pulled off something I didn't know I could do, and oh shit, aren't I fucking lit? Your ego gets inflated a bit, and then you show it to somebody else who has like a better ear than you, or somebody who just like listens to music and doesn't make it or whatever, and they're like, yeah, but this shit over here, you know, and I don't know about that sound right there, and I don't know, this section just doesn't work, and then your ego, just that little pinprick, pop, the inflated ego shatters into little shreds of mylar rubber and fucking floats to the ground sadly. And you're like, all right, well, back to the drawing board.
yeah. I mean, nothing like spending 80 hours on a song and like, God, I can't wait to show all my friends this and like, yada, yada, yada. And you're like finally feeling good about yourself. And then, you know, you got to play it for them and they're like, you know, maybe they're on their phone. They're not really paying attention. You play it and they're not, you know, they're not even really listening. And then they hear something that catches their ear and they're like, oh, that's weird. And that's like, that's the entire like extent of the feedback you get. And like that's like the good end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And then the rest is normally someone like listening to it, and if they're your friend and they don't have the courage to hurt your feelings, they're like, yeah, I like it. Mm-hmm.
It's
I got a question for you.
I like the itness of it, though, just the whole thing, no notes.
It is a thing.
Nope.
That I approve of.
Like Morty hearing that dude's fucking
like
screenplay on the Purge planet.
That should be. We should have started this podcast with that clip because that's like so accurate. It's like you want honest feedback and then you get it and you're like, no,
fuck you.
Fuck
yeah,
you.
Fuck that. I spent too much time on this track.
No, come
it
on,
already
hit me
says
with
final in the export.
Final, in fact. Final 3.
Did I stop doing final?
All right,
I
real
just
talk
do
though.
numbers
Real
'cause
talk
it's
though.
never.
What?
Yeah, I just
what
put the
is
date.
worse?
Take my
What
pants
is
off.
worse? Realizing yourself that your own shit is ass the next morning, or being super hyped on it and sending it out and then getting feedback that people don't like it?
I don't know. I can't call which one's worse. That's a good question, though. Like,
I think definitely sending it to someone and getting back, because if you realize it's ass, like you remember what parts about it you liked, and then you like, okay, like I can fix this. I'll fix this. Like it hasn't shattered your sense of like self-worth for production yet. You're like, that was a turd, but I can polish it.
I think both are important ways to, you know, live as a producer, like for real. You know, it's like you have to gain that skill of taking a step back and objectively listening to your music, you know, preferably like maybe after a reference track or 3, where you're like, okay, quick, remind me before I listen to my shit, what does good music that I love sound like? And now I'll go play mine. And then like, you know, you see Il Gates do that on his live streams all the time, where he's like, okay, cool, coming back to this tune that I was working on yesterday. Let's see what we got. Press play, and then just start writing notes. Like, yeah, that transition from the intro to the verse 1 didn't work that well. Okay, cool. Oh, you know what? That bass is too quiet. Okay. Oh, you know what? I don't know. There's some harshness in that pre-drop vocal. Oh, hey, look, this, that, and the third. And then you've got this list of things that you can go in and not get lost in the DAW. You've got a checklist, bang out that checklist, hit export, wait till tomorrow, or send it to somebody else. But always there's shit I'm not going to think about. There's shit I'm not going to hear from that. And if I don't have anybody to pass that to, you know, I might as well just go back to how I was living before I joined the dojo, just sitting, stewing on my own tracks forever, not having anybody to give it to track feedback or go in a session and be like, yo, why isn't this working though? I know it's a good idea. You know, you gotta balance those two. Like, I think the more you're able to give yourself that critique and build that muscle yourself, the less impactful other people's constructive criticism is in a negative way. And it's more like, okay, cool, yeah, I heard something like that. I heard that kind of not working, but I didn't know what to do to fix it. And they've got a solution. But, and then, if you're only doing your own feedback, you're missing out on anybody else's perspective.
Yeah, facts. That's man, one thing that's really been helping me lately, kind of come to terms with why doesn't my shit slap as hard as I want it to, and why don't I have a catalog of 200 songs yet, all that slap, is looking at, all of these producers I look up to, looking at all these projects that are coming out and realizing how many people are on it, how many songwriters it's went through, how many producers it's went through, how much QA has gone through that from so many different perspectives to get it to the state that it's at. And then, if you pull that in to reference your track with, it can be a little demoralizing, and it can feel like, why can I not hit this standard? But that point you brought up of getting other people's feedback on it is so huge. And I think that's kind of like a lost art now, since bands are kind of losing popularity. I feel like things are leaning way more towards like your rapper or singer, and then like your DJ kind of thing, more so than it is towards like bands. Even in that world, I feel people are home recording all that stuff, doing it solo. So I feel like because of that, it's a lot easier to kind of get like copycats and clones of like people, because you only have that one influence. And if this person is your favorite artist, you're trying to do what they're doing, which they did with a team of 5 people, and then you're not meeting the bar.
Yeah.
There's a lot I can
we were
go in
talking
on
about
there,
that
but
last episode, and that's like so real. I was kind of hoping you'd touch on that too. Like, we listen to this great music that's out there, and none of those songs go out if you're like on a team of people that all like help with the music, and maybe one person's the writer, the composer, the producer, and they're the only name on it. But you don't think that these other people, that these big musicians don't have like teams of people with good ears that they trust to like show their music and get feedback on it and be like, oh shit, yeah, good call. Let me turn that up, let me turn that down, and let me delete that sound. Yeah, that will make the verse better.
yeah, I feel like that ties into what we talked about too, where it's like when you're in that kind of process and that's what you're trying to accomplish, and then you send your music out to labels, or then you listen back to your own music and you absolutely despise it, or you get feedback that like, hey, this is cool, but this just ain't it. I feel like it can kind of become like this feedback loop where you're like, well, fuck, it's not close enough to who I want to be, to who my influences are. But you don't get that when you have 5 people, typically, because everybody grew up with different music. Even if they share the same taste, they probably got into it at different times, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's got their own way to relate to that same music. So, yeah, man, it's different. It's like you get to expand the main ideas further, I feel. It's like where you would get stuck on how to make a variation here, like somebody else like might come out with something totally left field that fits, that just wouldn't have even entered your stream of consciousness.
That's
and, like,
why collaboration is so powerful. Exactly. That's why I tell people when they're like, oh yeah, you want to collab on something? Like, yeah, because you're going to have an idea that I never would have had. And then I'll have something to add to it that you never would have thought of. And, like that synergy right there is where like 1 + 1 = 4. And you're like, oh shit, I didn't know that we could make something this powerful. We're talking a lot about, dealing with criticism, and, negative criticism can definitely be rejection. But what about like straight up rejection? I remember I got a memory when we were talking about, playing it for a friend, and then I listened. I had some I've been making rap beats for a couple years, and, I was like playing the rap beats, for me and my homies at their house party. And then like some other people showed up, and one of the girls like, oh, what's this music? This is whack. Play something better. And I'm sitting there. Oh, she doesn't like my shit. This girl I don't know hates my shit.
Dude.
And, objectively, yeah, it was like unmixed rap beats that I was only a couple years deep into production. It is like, Of course it sucked. But like my homies didn't care. They just wanted to rap over anything. So we were all just doing a little freestyle, you know. But like then somebody comes in and get rejected, and at that point I just, you know, pulled into my little shell like, oh man, okay, I guess we'll play some other music, you know.
Dude.
You know, and that was one of my first times actually being like publicly like rejected on my music like that. And then that's like in front of the whole party, and everybody else who was already there knew that we were listening to my shit. So they were all being like nice and understanding, like, oh, it's like the homie, he's learning how to do this shit. This is actually pretty good considering that. And she comes in like, why isn't this like a 50 Cent beat already? Why isn't this Dr. Dre? That's what I listened to.
Dude, I literally had like the exact same thing happen to me one time. Like we were just kicking it at like an after party, and like I ended up with the aux and I was playing some tunes, and I played some, you know, new stuff that was like finished that I was working on. And, you know, some people liked it or bobbing their head. Some people didn't even probably notice what music was playing. And then like, you know, I was like, oh, I just made this one song. Like, I really like it. Like, yeah, it's a little rough around the edges, but like, I think it's cool. It's kind of like different. And I like played it. And this one girl was like, what is this song? It is god awful. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Fucking shuffle. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, like, oh, I don't, yeah, shuffle. Shit happens, man. So I can't be paying attention to the music that much. Like, that is so classic. And like when I knew that we were going to talk about this, I'd actually been thinking about the topic as a whole. And it's so strange because that is like such a prototypical example of the ego death that happens every time you like show your work to someone. But it's like
A girl
it's such
rejecting your shit is like a psychedelic experience.
I mean, like the funny part is it's like this weird like double-edged sword where like to do this at all, you have to have like an almost overinflated confidence that you can, right? Because there's so much to learn. There's so many different ways to do it. So many people are doing it amazingly well. And if you expect that yourself learning this stuff will be able to compete with your idols, maybe not today, but one day, like you have to be able to kind of like build yourself up to the point where you're like confident enough that it doesn't feel like a waste of time, right? Like it can be just fun, and it is just fun, but you know, if you have like professional aspirations, you have to like tell yourself that like this is going to be worth like all this time and effort. Like I'm getting better, I'm improving, and like part of that, like ideally would be positive feedback from people, right? But as soon as you get negative feedback, then it like reduces that like ability to be confident, and like you're not wasting your time, like you're getting better, like all of that stuff just gets checked. And so like it's incredibly necessary to have those moments, but then you also have to have this like just steadfast confidence that like you can do it. And it's like what I realized is that like you literally have to have both. Like you literally have to have just an iron conscience in which you have confidence that you're getting better, you're doing good. And if someone says they don't like what you're doing, that's fine. Like they didn't like this. Like fine. Maybe everyone hates this. That's also that you have to be also okay with that. Like, and just let it roll off and continue to like build like your skills and the confidence that comes with that. But it's like this strange double-edged sword. What do you guys like think about that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, it's like, you know, you got to be able to treat it like a science experiment. You know, it's like true science isn't about getting the right answer or proving your hypothesis right. It's about being like, okay, this is my best guess at how to do this, or my best guess as to what will happen when I try this. And then you try this. And then you take down the actual results. And then you form a better hypothesis based on those results. And then you do another experiment. And that's what music's got to be like at the end of the day, because if you're expecting to be right at how your music is, or you're wrong, that's a bummer way to be, where it's like, okay, well, today I'm trying out this set of sounds at this tempo and this key with this arrangement and this melody and this lyric. Let's see how that works. And then each iteration of that track that you do, each draft with more feedback from yourself or others, is just the next experiment to see if this hypothesis of I think this set of sounds will work together. But you just got to keep nudging and changing the experiment a little bit each time before you hit render, and then get some more feedback and until people are like, oh shit, I want to go dance to this. And you're like, okay, cool. Now I'll put it in my DJ set and see how it stands up on a system, how it sounds live. And then you come back with more notes, and then eventually you release that tune.
Dude, that's like, I love that metaphor so much. Because if you're a good scientist, you don't get mad at the results. The results are the results.
You go, okay.
Yeah, exactly. You had a hypothesis. You came up with a set of tests and parameters. And when you get the results back, you don't go, those aren't the results I wanted. You go, oh, okay, interesting.
I was looking for cigarettes are good for your lungs.
Yeah.
Keep trying until we get that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a bad scientist.
Yeah.
Trying to force the data to prove what you thought, or only cherry picking data
for,
to support and be right. To be right. That's not the point. The point is to get the data.
You're not a scientist. You're a scientist.
You're a quack. Like you get the data, you adjust your tests and your hypothesis, and you get new data. Like, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's the best metaphor ever.
Yeah, and at that point, then you've reframed it from rejection to data.
Yeah, it's all just
okay,
data.
Cool. I'm just crowdsourcing data on whether or not this song hypothesis works. My hypothesis, well, this will make people dance. If nobody dances, you say, okay, what do I need to adjust in this experiment to change it? Is it the levels? Maybe the drums are too quiet. That's why nobody's dancing. Maybe the drum groove sucks, and that's why nobody's dancing. Maybe the bass line and the drum groove don't gel together, and that's why nobody's dancing. But you figure that shit out. Ask people who know better than you. Ask people who don't know nothing and just either dance or don't dance to the music. All that's good data, as long as you're able to filter it and not internalize it as a negative reflection on you as a human being. Because that's where it gets really rough, is where you get rejected on your shit, or you hear somebody doesn't like your shit, and you're like, what the fuck's wrong with me, though?
Yeah.
That's the wrong question to ask.
Yeah.
Like, nothing's wrong with you. You're exactly where you are on your journey doing this shit. And this particular song, yeah, right, that is really it. Yeah, get better at being rejected, and this won't hurt as bad. It's going to keep happening. You just, it's like going out for football and being mad every time you get tackled. Like, no, it's like literally just part of the game here. Like, if you didn't want to get hit, there's a lot of other sports that do not involve tackling. Go play tennis, go play golf. They're tackle free and people have a blast.
Man, the thing too is, just because most people you show it to hate it doesn't mean it can't be wildly successful. Probably not if it's a terrible song with a terrible mix down, blah 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 blah. But like, if you really put your effort into the song and you have something behind this song, like a feeling that you wanted to put into it, or an experience, then just because it gets rejected by 100 labels doesn't mean that it couldn't be the biggest song of next year. And like, man, think of Gucci Gang by Lil Pump. Gucci Gang. Bro, who do you know, both of you guys, that actually unironically likes that song? Everybody looks back. I mean, it's catchy, but everybody looks back and
I like pop rap.
I find myself
that was like the stupidest song ever, right? So it's like, man, that song hit 1 billion streams. So I'm pretty sure everybody in the chat here feels like they can make something better than Gucci Gang. So, just be Gucci Gang.
I mean, definitely something more like meaningful lyrically, for sure. But I mean, like you said, sometimes it's not about what we think intellectually will be the thing. Oh, well, I did this really complex type of melody, or like I really spent 100 hours on this sound design, or I have these lyrics that'll like fucking change your whole life if you like really listen to them and figure out all 4 layers of the metaphor and fucking you're like, or sometimes people just want to get ratchet. Like that's also a thing. Sometimes people like something that's catchy, goofy, funny, doesn't take itself too seriously. That's also a good part of life. And make music for the part of life. Cryptochronica said it when we interviewed him the other week. He was saying, picture like where does this music belong? Where does it live in the world? Because that's important. Like, fucking Gucci Gang, Lil Pump isn't like, yo, I'm trying to make a song that's gonna like fucking blow people's minds lyrically. He was like, yo, this phrase sounds cool as shit. It hits like materialism, it hits like camaraderie and rap culture in this fucking triple Venn diagram, and maybe a quadruple one with funny and goofy, but still cool. It's like
I'm just
it's
imagining
hitting
all the math equations as he's writing the song.
right. It's just like, but it's like these 4 simple things that all like, oh, these 4 different simple, easy to hit things that people like, and I can't stop saying this phrase, so I'm gonna record it.
Man,
People hated on Kanye for Poopity Scoop, but like, what other lyric do I really remember off that album? Speaking of also songs with Little Pump on them.
Man, the thing is, I feel is like I like some bad music, and a lot of people like a lot of bad music. Like usually, most songs, honestly, if you step back, if you really study like great songwriters, if you step back and reference that to most other songs, like, bro, it just doesn't compare. It's like a lot of what's coming out nowadays is DJ slappers, like, and really short pop tunes to put on Spotify. So, like, technically, it's not really that quality. It's just kind of feeling like a time and place, and isn't that memorable. But people still enjoy it because, like you said, they can associate it with a time and place. And I think that's actually one of the biggest things that's holding people back when their style is like very like varied and they're trying to like set some kind of like foothold within their scene that they're going for and they're submitting to labels. It's like, I think a label is more likely to fuck with you if you have a more generic sound, but it's dialed in and you have that down on lock and it goes with the imagery and blah, blah, blah. Versus if you make the best future bass song, then you make the best death step song, then you make the best D&B song, then blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying you can't make it work, but it really has, like, I feel like people will beat themselves up over the wrong reasons for a long time because a label said like your mix down is bad or whatever, not realizing that like they're also biased and have certain like not distortions in their like opinion or whatever, but like they might not even they might be like it's the mix down, but if that email was presented a little more professional with all the branding on point and you had maybe like little mascot dude and you had 4 other songs on an EP that are all similar and you got the package down, like it might be a different story. So
yeah, they might be like, oh, okay, give this guy an engineer and we can handle, because he's got everything else.
Dude, that's so funny you mentioned the mix down, because I was actually gonna like tack onto that. Like sometimes the mix down isn't good, it's just like the easiest way to say no, right? Like, and like I don't know if anyone on here in the chat has ever used Submit Hub, but like
I was hoping we'd get here.
Some of my best mixed work that just gets rejected on Submit Hub has a response that says the mix down is bad. Sorry, we don't want it. I'm like I just had this other guy tell me the mix down was great, but it's not a good fit. Like, what is going on here? Like, some people just use the like engineering
response.
Yeah, it's like the easiest no, right? Because it's like they probably honestly do 90% of the songs they get. Like, you could say that about the mixdown, right? So it's just the easiest way to say no in like a copy paste response. So like you also have to like filter that a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like when you the 1,000 true fans model is something everybody should be aware of. And I feel like some people might not still be aware of that. But really, like, if you can find 1,000 people that love you enough, love you enough to give you $100 over the course of a year, it's $1 million right there, right?
It's 100,000.
100K, my bad.
Yeah.
Can't math right now.
Good living.
But man,
Canadian
that's
education system, people.
man. Yeah,
we thought America's was bad.
Yay. 100K a year, man. That's like doctor's salary right there. You know what I'm saying?
That's plenty.
Within 7 billion plus people, right? You
Pushing
can find 1,000 people that are going to be into your shit, and it's like, man, that chick came to the party and was like, "What the fuck is this to your music?" But if you put that in the right audience, people are going to be like praising that and be like, "Holy shit, this is the craziest thing ever." So that's like one thing to consider too, is like, just because you're at an EDM fest, everybody you show your dubstep song to isn't necessarily going to be into dubstep, or they might have some associations with the genre that maybe their ex was in a dubstep, they're trying to forget their ex, some shit like that, right? Like,
yeah,
there's so many reasons people won't like it, but if you can get as many of those factors in your favor, then it's kind of like scratching a lottery ticket where the odds are like slowly increasing in your favor. And if you scratch 1,000 successful ones, whoopity bam, you have a whole freaking artist career there that pays really well. And it doesn't fucking matter about the people that rejected you. Think about if you're into death step or some shit, whoever is the peak artist at the top, they don't care that 99% of the world probably fucking hates death step and is like, what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah.
For the 1% though, that hits with them, that resonates,
right?
Dude, to be
they
honest,
like it more because it pisses other people off sometimes in certain
exactly
genres. Like,
and
yeah, you hate this shit, don't you?
It fills a very specific need for place and time, like we were talking about. And I think that, like I said, people don't think about this too much, and then they never end up catering to anybody. People are trying to vibe out, and if you're trying to like establish yourself within like the dubstep scene or this scene or that scene, your shit needs to sound good. If it were to come on shuffle within a playlist with all of the other stuff that's kind of within that realm, but it doesn't need to be like an exact copy of that shit. Man, I feel like there's so much I could say on this, because like
I have one thing that I want to add in here real quick. Like,
yeah, please.
Like straight up, if everyone or like most people that listen to your music think it's good, but no one is like, oh my god, this is my favorite fucking thing, like, you're probably not like taking enough chances or like showing your own personality enough, right? Like, it would be way better to have 95% of people not give a shit or think it sucks, and have 5% of people go, oh my god, I couldn't live without this.
Yeah,
that is what gets you a career.
It makes your ad targeting easier too.
Totally. And it reminds me of what we talked about probably like a year or so ago. It was like it's like a quote or something. I was like, find what people hate about you and double down on it. Like, the shit that is repelling people is going to be the exact same thing that attracts people. If you start throwing out something lukewarm, it's just not going to resonate with people that much versus, you know, if it's hot or cold, if it's leaning in one direction. A mentor of mine told me this because I was like, I really struggled with writing lyrics and like taking some chances with my songs and all of that. I felt like the lyrics were holding back my production and then vice versa. And I was just playing it too safe, right? And he's like, man, this is cool, but you're not taking any like strong opinions on anything. You're describing shit in the production, you're setting a soundscape, but you're not actually telling me like how this relates to you. And he's like, push more of your imperfectness out. Don't be scared of offending anybody, because like, look at The Weeknd, for example. When he came out, people were like, this dude's edgy, he's an asshole, treats people like shit, he's a drug addict, blah, blah. And he's like, but still, they would rather hear about the fucked up drug addict's perspective than to hear from somebody that's like playing it too safe, won't offend anybody, is taking no stances on anything. And with your music, if you're not actively thinking about who wouldn't be into this type of music and who is going to absolutely love this kind of music, then you're kind of going to be in this weird gray area where like anything goes and you're just kind of trying to cater to everybody, but they could find little bits of your style in artists that do it better.
Yeah, that is something that we've talked about before. A note I got from Il Gates, I'd shown him some tracks where I was like kind of attempting like a G Jones style, but it just wasn't stacking up. And he's like, man, like, why are you like attempting to like slay the underground sound design scene when you're like actually good at making like songs with like a vocalist, and you could like make the more poppy version and then get a remix done. Like I don't see why you're focusing on doing the thing that's the hardest mark to hit that's also not in your wheelhouse. Like, oh shit, that's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you do what you're capable of, the melody stuff, which I agree you totally excel at, there is actually a chance now for G Jones to be like, yo, that's sick as fuck. I want to remix that. I want to hop on that because I don't know how to do that. I could never do that. I got my little thing down here. And while you're looking at that person, you're like, that's the fucking pinnacle of what's possible. And I want to be G Jones. Like, bro, G Jones does what G Jones does because that's all G Jones can do. Not all he can do, but that's where his skills are sharpest. You feel me? He's not going to be able to produce a country banger or make a future rhythm slapper or blah, blah, blah. But he's got his style down on lock. And, you know, due to specific gear choices, what comes easiest to him in the DAW, blah, 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 you know, he went down that road. Now, let me tell you, there's plenty of people I've shown G Jones to who did not
Don't
like with it.
This is confusing.
But
yeah,
like,
but you just haven't taken enough acid at a festival, bro. Like
the other day,
get on my level.
Oh my god, I was playing The Ineffable Truth, the album by G Jones. Fucking incredible. Like one of my favorite, the top 10 electronic
I'll have
albums.
to go bump that album again.
Like it's so good. And one of the songs comes on, and Shell, my girl, hadn't been really paying attention, and like the like verse kind of drop comes in, and it's like some bloops and stuff, and like I think it's pretty cool. And she's like, what is this garbage? This is so annoying. Like, I hate this. And I literally just breathed like a gigantic sigh of relief because it's like,
oh right, so subjective.
like
people fill up arenas for G Jones sound, fucking mob Red Rocks and shit. Like, you know, and the rest of the world can hate it. Like we're talking about 1,000 true fans. So I did some quick calculations on my computer here. What % of the world of the humans is 1,000? I just
point
round
0.00008.
Less than that.
0.4.
There are 2 more zeros, and then only a 125. It is so think of this out. This is 1.25 1/millionths of 1% of the planet's population.
Y'all got
or you could say 12.5 10/millionths of a percent. But it is a 125 behind 6 zeros behind a decimal point of the population. We're talking about an infinitesimally small amount of actual humans compared to the total. If they love your shit enough to each year come to a show or two, buy the album, buy some merch, you are set. You are making probably triple your salary now.
Yeah.
Doing what you love the most.
And people can hate it.
Yeah.
And still reject it. And
Dude,
you can still be at that level.
Everyone can hate it. And now, honestly, the cool thing about like today's music ecosphere is that like you can be middle class in the music industry and make a good living for yourself because your ability to reach those 1,000 people is no longer gate kept by a label or being able to like market to people. You have all the tools at your disposal to reach those 1,000 people and make them a true fan. It's like I actually talk about this all the time with like if I'm explaining like what I do to someone and they're like, oh, like you're not signed by like a label or whatever, someone that just doesn't know music at all, or is like, it doesn't even like music. You're just having that conversation. You're like, well, actually, like nowadays, like there's a huge democratization of like the music industry that like even 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have. And it's like a huge gift.
Amen.
And like all of that makes it even more important that you don't just go for most people thinking it's good. You have to really dive into like what is 100% truly you, and finding those other 1,000 people that are truly, as dialed into your vision with you as possible, which is also kind of like a weird X factor on the science metaphor, because like you can get 99, well, I guess it kind of fits in because you can get 99 sets of shit data and then on the same test get one result of good data, and then just like, okay, what was the one variable I changed that got like this set to work? And it could be just who you showed it to, and then just like
so big.
dive 100% into that.
Yeah, because I mean, think about how many times you've listened to a song the first time and been like, meh, not for me. But then it comes on the radio a few more times, and next thing you know, you're singing along to the hook. And then you're like, actually, you know what? I'm glad I gave this some more chances, because like this song actually really slaps. I just didn't really know why it slapped. It didn't resonate with my soul on the first time because I wasn't used to this sound. I wasn't expecting the sound, but now I'm back to it and it's good. Like I went on a little memory lane grunge music deep dive on YouTube the other day. I was listening to like Blind Melon and fucking Smashing Pumpkins, and got around to Soundgarden. One of my favorite songs of all time is Black Hole Sun. I imagine you guys also think that song is pretty good.
That's a good song.
It's a slapper.
It's a slapper, right?
It's a
fucking 30 years of people being like, yeah, love this tune, right? But I wanted to know more about that song because I've loved it for so long. So I like started looking up the Wikipedia and looking at the history and the critical reception. And like people were like, oh yeah, it's a decent tune or whatever. Yeah, it's cool. It's really derivative of the Beatles because they're trying to do this psychedelic 60s guitar thing, right? I never thought Beatles ever, but apparently Chris Cornell is a huge Beatles fan, and like the little like tremolo wobbly wah-wah on the verse guitar is apparently like a lot of people in the early 90s were like, oh, you're clearly ripping off the Beatles there. It's clearly a Beatles tribute. And then like one review for Rolling Stone was like, oh yeah, they do their best attempt at these things. The problem is it's just not a well-written song. The melody isn't good. It's not catchy. It's not memorable. And I'm thinking, well then why in 2021 am I still fucking singing that song in my head without it playing? Won't you come wash away the rain? That still slaps to me.
It's a banger.
Man,
and just to close that out, years and years later, when they did their like 100 greatest rock songs of all time, or their like top 100 songs of the 90s, that song is on the best songs lists, all of them. Best guitar solo list, best song list, best rock song list. It's on all of them shits.
Yeah.
So even if like one of the most important voices in music criticism who worked at Rolling Stone at that time didn't feel your shit, the world felt the shit.
Yeah, I always like, it's so funny because it's the survivorship bias that everyone gets from the music that you hear and seeing the success of an artist. Like I remember watching, there was just some video the other day I saw that was like talking about Katy Perry, like as she like, broke into the mainstream, and like she got signed by like one of the major labels and wrote the album, most of the album that like she eventually like, I don't remember which one it was, but like the first one that like had like Kiss a Girl or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the label hated it so much they just dropped her. Like international superstar, like a household name, the record that like broke them into popular like new heights, like
She's a dark horse, a lion, and a firework.
Just
And
got
y'all dropped her right before it happened.
straight up rejected. Just like, oh my God, this is so bad. Get out of here. We don't even want you as part of our team anymore. Like, that shit happens to the literal top of the top.
Man,
Yeah.
that
And
was
you're
one of the
mad about
biggest songs too.
yeah, and you're mad about the person that you barely even know at the party saying they don't like it. Like, fuck. Like,
Right? Perspective.
put it in perspective.
Perspective.
Funny thing about that too is there's a Max Martin interview. Anybody that doesn't know Max Martin should Google Max Martin.
One of the greatest producers of literally all time.
Literally, probably writes
By
everything
just
on
the
top
sounds
100.
and by the numbers. Holy shit. Yeah, I remember when somebody first told me who he is. I was like, who? Like, let me show you his fucking Wikipedia page.
Yeah, so he was one of the primary writers on I Kissed a Girl. And one of the things he said in one of his interviews, he's like, I knew this would be a hit because people hated it and they were getting pissed off at it. And I was
Yeah.
like, we got something good here.
That's amazing.
And the survivorship. Oh, actually, first, I also want to bring up the recent example that Pitchfork gave the Peppa Pig album 0.5 higher than they gave Donda by Kanye West. So that's also just something to throw out there. And I think they also gave Mac Miller like a horrible fucking review for Blue Slide Park, like a 2 or a 3 or some shit like that.
That's
That
such
ended
a
up being
good
an
fucking
amazing
EP.
album. So
It's just great.
and the survivorship
Rest
bias
in
thing you
peace.
said too is like so fucking true because all of these tunes that are being reviewed and critiqued and torn apart have that X factor that made the person want to review it in the first place. And what honestly, I feel like the most insightful thing to look at is like compare and contrast artists like album reviews over the years and see what different reviewers have picked up on and what has remained consistent in the artist's sound, because those are the things that they've picked up on works for them and makes them better. And also watch like reaction videos and see what other people are picking up on, because while you can follow the metrics of music theory and blah, or the criteria of music theory and blah blah blah, and you can hit certain metrics to tell you how mathematically proper your song is, you also got to keep in mind that like most of these conventions and shit that people are used to has come from the world of classical music, where this shit was like very like classist and mathematical and blah 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 and very like pretentious, and they had some idea of perfect harmony. That shit does not really translate. Like, yeah, I mean, sure, time signatures, basic harmony, blah blah blah, all that shit, but that is present in modern day music. But look at somebody like Jimi Hendrix, for example, who's like, nobody has that kind of swag on guitar. And the reason that he sounds the way he does and has actual swag through his guitar phrasing, which is unheard of, is because he uses the rules as a framework. I know you've heard this a million times. You learn the rules, use it as a framework, and then you break them. But he actually did that last step of breaking the rules and not playing too precisely. And when you have something that is kind of unable to be placed in this conventional box, that's where you get the music where people are scratching their heads and they're like, but how does that make sense? How does that work? And it's like, while you were trying to checklist off all of these items that music theory told you, that reviewers told you your song should be arranged like this, your song should have that, you missed out on that very human element that actually gives the song its unique, identifiable characteristics.
Amen.
There's like, that's the magic part of it. You can get as mathematical as you want, but if you stick too strictly to the formula, then it's just perfect. It's just, there's nothing to be amazed by, because, I mean, of course, it's perfect. Everything falls into place. Everything makes sense, but it just makes it bland because then you've heard it before. There's no unpredictability.
It's even more, it even makes more of a case for like even if you were trying to do genre X or style Y and literally got it 100% nail on the head, there's still not really enough reason for people to care and love what you're doing, because you've perfected a thing that was cool when no one had done it, right? And so like, it's even more important to just be exactly you make the music that only you could make. And like, even if it's rough around the edges, even if the quality isn't 100%, if you deliver on the emotional context, the authenticity, like, people are going to care. People are going to latch onto it. Even like, it's a free pass for like all of the things that you thought you needed to worry about. Like, they no longer matter because you've done something that grabbed someone, and all the other stuff just blurs into the background because they're focused on like how original or cool or how much it represents them, you know?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you know that emotion trumps everything. Like if the people are like, is this a good mix down? Like, did it convey what the song was trying to do, and did it hit the audience? Then yeah. Like, could the kick have been louder? Is the is there a little too much 10K? Like, who cares if people love it? Like, it's close enough.
And you
The
know what's
mix did its
funny?
job.
Exactly. And you know what's funny is all the music reviewers would probably point out all of the stuff on that list, right? Like, oh, the mix feels unfinished, like he was trying to do this but didn't do this, whatever. That like, even like a music reviewer, like, I'm sure like you just noticed with Soundgarden, is that like they get focused on things that they pick apart, right? And sometimes they miss the forest for the trees too. So
Yeah.
like, and the rejection of something authentic is more often than not because the people that are giving you feedback are comparing it to what they know, not asking themselves, do I like it? Or is this cool? It's, how does this stack up to this other body of work, because I'm an arbiter of taste, right?
Yeah.
And that is rejection that you should pay absolutely no mind. It like a really good wall against letting rejection fuck you up is starting with something that you absolutely love yourself. Like, truly, like, you made it for you. Like, even if someone says they don't like it, but you love it, like, there's something in there. Maybe the song isn't like engineered super great. Maybe there's like I said, it's rough around the edges. But if you truly love it, someone else in the world probably will too. And so like, focusing on that more than the snares a be too loud kind of feedback is way more important.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's like, if you get that feedback from somebody that knows what the fuck they're talking about, take it, implement it. It's super easy to turn a snare down 1 decibel. It like takes 1 second and maybe your song will be better. But that is never going to be the thing that makes or breaks whether your song is good. That's like just that little bit of polish that can help it translate across systems better, but like, without it being a dope song that conveys the emotion for the place and the situation to the people that you had in mind, like, that kind of communication through art is what's important. I want to give a big shout out to Camel Hotline, who dropped some big old gems in the chat. Said the great irony of art is that it's a lifetime of learning for some dipshit to write it off within seconds. But in a sense, that's freeing, because art is opinion and rejection is just another form of that. I think what's important is separating your self-worth from your work. We're humans first. That has so much more depth than anything else. Also, rejection isn't burning a bridge. It's simply a moment.
Yeah, amen.
And
honestly,
shouts
I think
out
it's
Camel Hotline. That's just like
Shout
fucking
out.
gems dropped on a podcast chat here. Big up, chat.
Big up,
Man,
chat.
I think as long
do
as
it
you're
best,
making
Rip Kenny.
progress, it's super respectable to be continuing to hit people up and update them and show them that, like, hey, I took your feedback and I applied it to this new song. All right, tell me what you think. All right,
Yeah,
good
right.
enough? All right, cool. I'm gonna keep showing up. and
People
I'ma keep
remember
sending you something and
persistence
implementing what you like.
and politeness too, because if you're like, oh, you don't like my shit, fuck you, they're gonna remember that shit and not want to listen to anything. If they give you that feedback and you're like, thank you so much for taking the time to even write anything, I'm gonna apply this, you're awesome. And then a few weeks later you send them that same song or a different song. We're like, hey, I remember you said, work on my drum groove. How's this one on this tune? Then they're like, oh, this person connected, this person listened. Now that's like an actual relationship that's starting to form between you and this person that rejected you. And instead of taking it as a moment to burn a bridge, like Camel Hotline said, you just took it as a moment, and you have a choice on how to react to that moment or how to respond to that moment. Because
Yeah.
reactions like fight or flight, or you do neither and freeze, you know? Whereas a
Amen.
response is when you take a moment, take a deep breath, and be like, all right, cool. What's the best way through this moment? I think it's going to be with gratitude for somebody even bothering to listen to my poorly mixed music and say anything back at me. Because that's huge. Like somebody took 3 minutes to listen to the bad song and then a few more minutes to write about you and hit send. And you're mad at them? They just took time out of their day to try and help you.
Yeah. Take a
Yeah.
breath.
Mhm.
Take a step back. It's really easy to like have your first impulse when someone rejects what you sent them, like, no, like you're wrong, like your barrier comes up, right? Because you're like your artistic ego is like, no, I can't let that be dented. Like, no, but like let's take a second, like respond like exactly what you said, and then like they're gonna appreciate that you listened to them, and then you're building a relationship even though you got rejected. Like Mike Camel Hotline said, can rejection be healthy? And absolutely it can.
Yes.
That's one good example. Like even if someone rejects you, if you respond in a, you know, constructive way, you can build a relationship there. I think also rejection, we've talked about this on the show a little bit before, but like I feel like rejection early on is like what makes like a breaking artist like amazing or not, right? Like everyone has like their favorite artist that like was incredible when you like their first couple albums, or like when you stumbled across them, you're like, oh my God, this is so good. And as time went on, like you felt like their stuff got like less edgy or like less good, or just like didn't like doesn't have the same emotional pull. I feel like a little bit of that is because you get to a certain point where like you're successful, and then like the team around you is like afraid to reject what you're doing, and like you're too important for people to like just give you honest rejection for your work. And so like the bar kind of gets lowered a little bit, because when you show something to them, they're like, yeah, it's great, like let's put it out, you know, instead of like early on, before you had cut your teeth and like proved yourself as like a successful artist, they would have been like, nah, like this is bad. Like do it again. You know, and like that is healthy if you're able to like frame it, like we said, as a science experiment. Like, okay, that didn't work. Let's change some of the variables in the experiment and let's run the test again. You know, it's just repeated tries, but it's all about how you frame that rejection that can make it healthy or toxic.
Exactly. Framing is so important. And the toxicity, you know, can feel like it's coming from outside, you know, especially if somebody like says, this sucks, you know, but that's just their reaction to music they don't like hearing. That's just them in a moment, just throwing words out there. It's not really about you at all. It's about what they like and don't like. And the toxicity will really come from inside ourselves, where we will get wrapped up in what it means, take it personal, start making assumptions, getting angry, holding on to that anger, stewing in that shit, you making that a reason not to create anymore. Like all those things are toxic, but they're coming from us. They're based on our own choices. And I think that agency is extremely important to remember. Like our reaction or response is our responsibility. And that's what that word even means, responsibility, right? Like the ability to take that time to respond instead of reacting with anger and negativity to negativity or perceived negativity of that rejection.
And it's so much easier said than done, right? Because everyone has such a personal, like a deep personal connection to the music you make, because like it's a part of you. It's an extension of your feelings, your experiences, your taste. And if someone says they don't,
sometimes,
yeah,
if you're not
sometimes.
trying to copy
Right.
whatever hot artist.
Right. I mean, even if you are, then you're probably connecting it to your skills and your abilities, right? like I think it's somewhat inseparable for you to feel like your music, your art, and your sense of self are like the same thing, right? And like you can try and
Especially at
separate them.
first.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
god,
Or
especially at
maybe in the
first.
middle, because when you first start and you know for sure you're trash, it doesn't hurt as bad to be like, yeah, this doesn't work. Like, yeah, I know it's my first one. What could be better? You know, and then you're like, I think I'm kind of good. And then somebody's like, no, you're not. No.
Dude, isn't that funny too? Like there's this weird like grace period where like in the beginning when your tunes are trash but like you made something rather than nothing, like people are going to be like, oh wow, you made this, like sick, this is good, yeah, I like this,
Yeah,
tight.
keep trying.
Yeah, and then like, you know, you get to a point where it's like, oh my god, like wow, you made a good song, like this, I would listen to this is amazing, great job, like fucking golf clap to you, right? And then you show that same person another song like 2-3 years later, and
Nah, this ain't it, man.
their expectation of like what you should be able to do is like upped. And then like if it's, you know, because progression in music like anything else is a logarithmic curve, right? It's really steep and then it starts to flatten out and then it gets like really flat, right?
Indeed,
And
it
like
does.
your own impression of like how much you should be improving, like if that person liked this should blow their socks off, right? And then they're like, yeah, sick, dude, like cool, like you're still doing music, cool, you know, like.
Oh shit, you ain't quit yet?
And then like the difference in response, you feel like it's really easy to like internalize like, oh my god, I've gotten worse, or like take it super personally. But like again, you have to separate. You have to
I think
separate.
kind of comes back to that should conversation from last week,
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, I should be able to be better than this by now. I should be getting better responses. That's tough, you know?
But you ain't.
Yeah. I want to like close out by like getting more specific and talking about being rejected by labels.
Mm.
And even more specifically, being rejected by the dojo label that we're all here orbiting around.
Yeah.
Because I know that we've all been rejected by the dojo label. We have also all been accepted by the dojo label.
Yep.
And I know for me, there have been more of the former than the latter. You know, people like the songs I put out with the label, but you know, most of the songs, you know, even if they made the mixtape, didn't make the EP. You know, and it's like, and you think, oh, I thought my song was really good, and then you hear the songs that made the EP, you're like, okay, no, I see what you mean. That shit slap. You know, and I remember one for me that was like a big learning moment. It was tough on my ego, but it was very important in my growth, especially looking back at it, where I had already like made a song on the first Say My Name cipher, and I even got put as the first tune on that cipher, which meant a lot to me because that was one of my goals at the time, was to like get that coveted opening spot on the mixtape for the SoundCloud mixtape. And so, you know, everybody who presses play going to hear your track, even if they don't make it through all 20 minutes, you know. And then later on, it was my turn to pick a concept for a cipher and curate the cipher. And so I said, okay, let's do Say My Name again. And I made a Trap Jesus song last time. I'm going to make a Luke Rain song this time. And I took a timer beat I had made that I liked, and I worked it and worked it and worked it and worked it to death. Just absolutely ruined what could have been a decent idea, but I overproduced the shit out of it. I you know, did all these like crazy mud pies that were not well thought out and did not keep my sound fidelity high. And I tried to do too many changes and have too many ideas in it, and it ended up just an absolute mess. And my own song not only didn't make the EP, it didn't make the mixtape. And for a minute there, that really hit me hard. I was like, oh man, I was out here like trying to flex, trying to be like, yeah, well, I'm the sensei. My song's definitely going to make it. Let's see who else's does. And then having to like take a step back and like look at, oh shit, like I just got rejected. What led me to this point? Oh, like getting too into my ego, getting too into the thinking like my amount of hours and effort and manipulation I'm putting onto this is valuable as opposed to what actually sounds good and what actually feels good. Because it's like one of those moments like, well, look how much work I did on it. Yeah, who cares if it doesn't sound good? And then I finally understood that, like, however many hour track guillotine. I've heard, 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours, whatever. But like having a limit where if you've worked on it this long and it's still not done, like it's not gonna be. And that's okay. And, sometimes it's a good exercise to put a lot of work into something, but it's also a really good lesson to learn when to fucking stop and just let that tune go. It's not as good as I wish it was. And I have to be okay with that. Like that one really hit home and has left a resounding echo in my life.
Shit's
Yeah.
hitting home right now.
Yeah, right?
Dude, honestly, that is like another like class. I mean, it is like almost the prototypical sophomoric producer mistake, right? Is like as you start to get good enough that you know how to do all these things, you're like, I'm gonna flex on this one, and then you do all the things.
Producer flex time.
Yeah, and you pull out all the plugins and you do the craziest shit, and then you forgot what you were doing, which is making a song, and the song doesn't really care about all these crazy things that you know how to do and are flexing on them. Like, dude, there was like a certain point I remember where like I learned finally how to do neuro-y type mud pie stuff, and I made this song that was just like fucking crazy neuro stuff the whole time, and I was like, this is God's gift to bass music. And then like it just wasn't. And that's like, again, taking and you're building your skills and you finally realize all these new things you can do and you flex all these things, and then you're building your producer ego up, and then it's just another one of those notches where you're like, then you get the data back, and you're like, oh wait, I overspent on this part of the test. The hypothesis was wrong. The producer flex is not how to make the right song, right? But like everyone does that. Literally every producer, I'm sure here in the chat, myself here, my co-hosts, we've all done that. That's just something you do, and that is part of the learning process. It's baked into getting good at something that like those steps happen, right? Speaking of rejection from labels, and also kind of Submit Hub too, because that's labels or playlists. Like
they're adjacent for sure.
It is adjacent, and it's something I want to talk about, which is like the more you start to dial in your authenticity, like at a the level of production quality is even. As you start to dial in your authenticity, like you're gonna get more static and rejection from labels that are doing thing X, right? And it's something that I've gone through, and it's something that I really wanted to make sure we touched on this podcast, which is like, as you start to do something which you feel like is more original, it fits less with established taste and curators of taste like a label. It's more likely that they're not going to say that it fits what they're doing because it's different, right? And that is perfectly okay. Like that it could even be a sign that you're like doing even more what you should be doing. And so rejection from labels, it is something that you are going to deal with literally throughout the entirety of your production career. And like I said, when you start to dial in something even more unique and truly you, like you're going to get more of that. And especially on something like Submit Hub, where they're like looking for dubstep gym workout or like, whatever thing X is. And you're like, but I'm thing Y and this thing Y is really cool. They're like, nope, we only want thing X. Sorry.
And they're just like, why would we include this in our playlist that it doesn't make sense in?
Exactly.
Yeah, you really gave them the feels. This is a get lit playlist. Like I don't know
Man,
how to put the feels and then the litness in the same playlist.
Yeah.
to add on to that too, one example I think of is like back when I was like heavy into like rhythm and dubstep and stuff. There's just a whole bunch of rhythm groups, right? And when I think back at who I actually remember, there was one that was like Akatsuki Gang, and then there were just a bunch of random ones: animals, monsters, wizards, fucking whatever, right? Reapers. Now the shit is everybody, and I'm not picking on anybody, but whatever. Come up with some
I
title
feel
like
attacked.
wizards or whatever, and it's like, cool. That's cool and all that you're trying to be profound, but if I scroll through that list and I'm gonna check out one of them, I'm going to check out Akatsuki Gang because I watched Naruto as a kid. I remember how badass they fucking looked. I can see that, oh, we probably had shared that in common with our childhood immediately, right off the bat. Within 1 second, I've made this snapshot. Like, I've reflected back on my life. I'm like, Naruto's the fucking shit. I remember watching that as a kid. They know what's up. I'm going to check that out because immediately that gives me a little more insight and it gives me one more way to connect versus the typical thing. This is what I would have done. This is what a lot of people would do. They're like, oh, Reaper sounds cool or whatever. But it's like, bro, you're not being profound with that shit because it doesn't tell me anything about you. Call yourself degenerates. At least that gives me an idea of, all right, these dudes like to go wild. They like to party. They don't give a fuck. Versus if you're just like, Bass Boys. That's fucking cool, but that doesn't tell me shit about you. Versus even degenerates, I'm like, oh man, maybe I had a rough childhood growing up. I'm like, maybe these dudes get it. Maybe say Akatsuki Gang, right? They're sampling Naruto. They're doing this and that. They're adding little sound effects. They're adding little cues for you to be like, oh shit, they're into that too, man. Okay, I'll fuck with that. Versus people who are just choosing Reapers, whatever. What are you going to add? Grim Reaper noises? Who the fuck relates to that, bro? I get that it's like part of the grand vision and stuff, but there's no emotional pull to it. You got to give me a deeper story behind what does the Reaper represent, blah, 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 before I give a fuck. Versus, they found Akatsuki Gang. They're like, yo, I know what that shit is. There's already a fan base of people who knows what that is. And, it's in line with what we're going for, aesthetic wise, blah, blah, blah. Instantly build a moment of connection. That's the thing you got to be thinking about when you're making music and you're trying to connect with people on a deeper level is you're never going to win the game of being the best virtual riot. But I'm telling you personally, bro, if you throw in a Zelda sample, I'm going to be like, holy fuck, I love that game. I love this dude, right? You throw in one or two little things like that. Maybe you got a little Pokemon in your fucking artwork or something. Like, give me a couple points to connect with you with, and I'll see you as more than an artist. I'll see you as an actual human being where I'm like, man, like Evan, you too, Luke. Like, it's like we have so much in common at this point that I'm like, man, your guys' music is dope, but like, I feel you guys as people. Like, I could listen to that music and be like, man, I feel like I fuck with these guys. Like, I got a lot of in common with them, but I'm not like Evan. If you sent me the best fucking mixed rhythm track when we met, I would have been like, that's sick. But it didn't resonate with me as much as, the metal electronic hybrid, and then talking about all our favorite metal bands, and talking about growing up, and then playing guitar, and then all that shit, bro. That adds so much more depth than you having the sickest fucking sound design or coming up with the most fucking profound thing. It's like, cool. Nobody's trying to hear you be fucking profound. People are trying to connect and relate. And it was kind of hard for me to grasp at first. Like, why is Reapers not profound, or spiders or whatever the fuck? But this is, and it's like, because it actually makes a statement of who you are. And it's like, it adds one more Venn diagram of intersection. It adds one more layer of specificity to where if you have 10 things in common with a person, they're going to be a super fan if they fuck with your music, versus if they can't relate with your childhood or hobbies or interests or nothing, or if they don't even know that side of you.
Yeah, 100%. And a little sprinkle on top, like I'm sure that gang you were talking about with the Naruto samples, like everyone in that gang probably fucked hard with Naruto when they were growing up and like knew the show and like knew the culture and like really loved it. Like if some dude just like saw they were popping off and like tried to jump in, never had watched the show, like downloaded some sample off YouTube and tried to put it in, like spice it in there, like it's not going to come across the same, right?
100%.
So like you also like it like the profoundness comes from your personal connection with it, right? You have to look inside to figure out what that is for you. And like once you land on it,
of
exactly,
cool shit and cool music,
then
culture.
double down on that shit, right?
But I don't know, man. Who would go name their whole group project based off some fucking cartoon or something? That seems dumb to me. Boop,
Yeah.
boop, 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 boop.
And on that note,
And on that note.
Oh my god, I love you guys. Love the chat.
much love,
Big
chat.
up, chat.
Thank you
Big
for
up,
being
chat.
with us.
Fucking awesome. Really appreciate y'all being here and dropping gems and you know, some zen as fuck gifts in the chat. You know, you guys are awesome. Till next time, humans. Peace. And peace among worlds, Morty. Ha ha ha. Oh shit, how do I turn this off? All right, humans. Thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate you. Once again, I'm Luke Rain signing off. But before we go, just want to make sure you go get that song of the week, you know, from Rip Kenny, Not One More. You hear it behind me. It slaps. Go buy it on Beatport or, you know, just bump it on Spotify. Put it on your favorite heavy playlists and rock out. You know, support the guy, Rip Kenny. He gives you all this free game and free knowledge. Let's go bump the shit out of his track. And funny story with that he asked me to tell is that a lot of people in his life, his friends, his folks, did not like this tune, but he believed in it and he started putting it out, and he's getting like Instagram messages from random people that don't even know him that are like, I fucking love this song. So you never know. It might just not be for those people. It might be that song. If you believe in it, put that shit out there and go bump Rip Kenny, Not One More, or we're not gonna let one more rejection piss us off. We're just gonna keep rolling, all right? And support our sponsors, Dojo TV, where we recorded this shit, all sorts of great free classes and a great free chat on our Discord. Like, get up in there, say hi to us, all right? And the weekly download, where you can learn from Ill Gates and his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 250 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. Crazy deal, so much content. It will help you be a better producer, guaranteed. And guest practices, where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute. He's the best engineer we know, and your first class is free. There's so much more over there, but at least do yourself the favor and go watch him once, and you will get your mind blown on his engineering shit, all right? Remember, thehumanmusicpodcast.com is where to find all sorts of things. Go say hi. And then, follow us at The Human Music Podcast or at Human Music Pod on Twitter. I'm Luke Rain, at Luke Rain Music, also known as Trap Jesus, at What Would Trap Jesus Do? Say hello. And then Rip Kenny is at Rip Kenny Music. Tesco is at I Am Tesco. Come say hi. Shout us out. Send us questions. We want to hear from you guys. All right? Much love, humans. Peace. And peace among worlds. I like it.